Well, we are back. Welcome to the No Show. My name is Andrea Edwards.
I'm Tim Wade.
And my name is Joe Augustin. And between the three of us, we hope to try to bring a little bit of, it's a big word to say, enlightenment to the world, but I think that's something we can try to do. But before we get to all the big stuff, and the way I put this to friends is, if you'd like to steal a bunch of conversations you can have over the weekend and seem very intelligent, listen to this show and then don't attribute any of it. But in the meantime, though, we've been away for a while, and the reasons have been aplenty. But I'm going to let Andrea basically tell you what she's been up to and dealing with. You've been a real champion.
It's been a lot of fun. Yeah, no, so we were going to start at the very beginning of February, but my husband was rushed into hospital for emergency surgery, and it certainly focuses the mind. One of the things I did notice is I was trying to update people through Facebook, because that's where your family and friends typically are. And I noticed how many people aren't using it anymore. Have you guys noticed that? People are really dropping off social media. So I was getting people reaching out going, oh, I didn't even know about it. Someone told them about it. And I'm like, have you not been on Facebook? No, people aren't. They're stepping away, which is, I understand why, but I also don't think it's necessarily a good thing. But anyway, Steve's on the mend. That's the good thing.
Yeah. That is the best thing.
Part of it also, actually, Facebook's algorithm has changed quite a bit. So distribution to your existing team or group of contacts just isn't happening as much as all. If you put something on global, it's less likely to get shared than if you put it on a friends list only. So it's things like that also it can seem that less people are engaged with you, because actually Facebook engages less people now.
Yeah, although people did tell me I'm not on Facebook anymore. So that was a regular message coming through, which kind of concerns me, because we need all the good people in the world speaking up on the digital platforms to drown out the not so good actors. Yeah. And if we all disappear, they get a bigger platform and a bigger voice, and they control what's going on in the world. So I find it a concern. But anyway.
By the way, I don't want to minimize what you've been through there. I'll just put it this way: not just serious surgery, holding a family together, keeping the spirits up, looking after the boys, making sure they feel good while dad's going into hospital, they're going off to camp, that sort of stuff. All that, seriously, you shouldn't minimize that. That's a lot of work, and we were with you on that. I'm sure the audience can gain a lot from that as well, because if there's anybody who's showed strength among the three of us on the last month or two, of course, with exception to Tim trying to meet a deadline to put in his homework, it's been you.
Yeah, I got to tell you, I'm exhausted, and even sort of getting my head around doing the show again, just because there's a process that I go through in the week building up to the No Show, just to try and remember how my brain worked. It was, that was an interesting process. Yeah. Thanks. You guys were awesome. You're really awesome. We had some interesting chats into the late hours of the night, which all of the support, it was amazing. It really was. So I felt very loved and supported by my community.
Okay. And now that our moment of empathy is over, shall we continue with the 3 ways the world will end?
I don't know why I'm laughing so much. Okay, but yeah.
Yeah, well, so obviously we're going to have a big chat about ChatGPT and AI more generally. That's going to be the sort of second half of the show. But just to start with, we're going to go through some key stories. One of mine is Antarctica is going through an extreme heat event, which is really alarming the scientists. Tim, what's your big story that you want to share today?
I got Turkey and I got New Zealand.
Yeah.
I know you want a crypto update, but I'm going to talk to you about health and science and disease.
Yeah, no, which is important too, right?
Well, bird flu has made a significant jump into the mammals. We'll talk a bit more about the risks to human beings.
Yeah. All right, so let's kick it off. So if you somehow missed it, which would be a miracle if you did, Rihanna sang at the Super Bowl. And there's a lot of excitement about that. Social media was full of it. And other than the story of the stage being way up in the sky because they were trying to protect the grass, the big story, of course, is that she is, I think, 3 months pregnant, which I didn't know. And her firstborn is 9 months old. So that means that she will be due a couple of Irish twins. But the story around Rihanna went in so many interesting directions. And to me, it's just really symbolic of what's going on in the world at the moment. Not only her, but like Sam Smith a few weeks ago, and there are all of these accusations of she was, what was it, channeling the devil and all sorts of extreme stuff. So, we're in a pretty funny place out there in the world. There's lots of weird things going on. But there's another big story that may not have gotten your attention, which may be starting to get your attention. It's been going for 2 weeks. There was a trail derailment in this area called I think it's East Palestine, and that's in the state of Ohio in the US. It's been called Ohio's Chernobyl. Why can't I say Ohio?
Ohio.
It's 4 letters. So it's just recently, like literally in the last 24 hours, starting to get mainstream attention, and it's a really big event. And basically, the 150-car train crashed, and it released vinyl chloride, and then they did a controlled release of chemicals into the air to prevent an explosion. So we're hearing all sorts of stories, and you wouldn't have heard this until just in the last 24 hours, dying chickens and pets, people with tears running down their eyes, red eyes, sore throats, that sort of thing. We're seeing right today, there's some footage especially on Twitter, where there's these rivers where if you throw a rock in it, you'll see these sort of weird colors sort of coming through. Of course, the train company and the government are saying it's safe, come back. People are saying, I don't want to bring my children there, but it's a poor neighborhood. So these people are not going to really have that many choices. And of course, the biggest threat is with vinyl chloride is that it is a long-term carcinogen. So, it's a really, really big story, and it's going to become a much bigger story, but it's about greed. It's also about government incompetence, and also potentially a lethal long-term for the residents. So that's going to be a story that we're going to be hearing. I'm sort of seeing Erin Brockovich sort of scenario in the future, so that's a big one. Did you guys notice that, or just more recently?
Well, underlying the story is this company that basically just very recently posted something in excess of $3 billion in profits for what they do. And they had this massive accident which had to have, families upended and moved and evacuated and everywhere. And they've done the right thing by offering $1,000 to every family affected. Yeah. And it was just remarkable that in this day, any kind of large event like that, the company has pledged $1 million to fix things. It's just crazy stuff. But apparently it has something to do with some of the rules that would change during the Trump era. I mean, everyone's pointing fingers and pushing the blame around, but it's something about breaking limits and stuff like that, which were released, which reduced the safety of trains. And when something like this happens, you go like, oh, why did you do that, right? But it's one of those things. It's going to be it is very, very serious. Animals showing up dead all over the place, I mean, you can't evacuate them. You can't tell them to go. They don't know where to go. But some people will leave like that, and some people didn't leave. Some people wanted to stay, and because they don't trust the government,
Yeah, trust. Right. And I just saw a report. I think there's been another big train crash in the last 24 hours as well, with one train load full of the same chemicals. So it's a story that's going to get attention. But Joe, do we have another pandemic on the horizon?
Well, there is there is an outbreak for sure already, but when I speak about the outbreak, it is not a human outbreak. It is currently an animal outbreak. Seals have now shown up as well, but the big outbreak was among sea lions, and the outbreak is in the avian flu. So the whole thing about the avian flu is it's supposed to be with the birds, and we have had in the past some infections that have that jump to human beings, but we've never had human to human spread. So that's one of the things on the backdrop. So there's not much mammalian spreading of the bird flu. Now what's different about this particular situation is it's a whole bunch of mammals, sea lions, who seem to have been made ill by this. Now it could be they spread it to each other. But it could also be that they all came across the same batch of food, which is a bunch of birds that died, and then they picked up the the bad food, so to speak, right? So the concern that is out there is that whenever you have all these secondary species getting infected, you actually have a greater chance for it to now jump to the next species and to have as the mutations develop, because you have more of a laboratory for all these changes to happen. Most scientists are not particularly worried about it right now, but can everyone say bats with me? It's something that they're saying that they're concerned in the sense that they're watching it. They're not saying it's a non-event, but at this point, it's not likely we're going to catch the avian flu from them. But the other thing that is in the world of science right now actually is is COVID and heart attacks, right? So there's been for quite a while now this big discussion online about you just don't know, especially when it comes to vaccinations. They're saying that with vaccinations, you just don't know what the relative risk is to COVID and all that stuff. As far as the heart goes, though, we do know a bit more now because the statistics are in. And in terms of data, I won't go through all the details, but the bottom line is there is 11 times more risk for heart situations coming out of COVID than there is out of the vaccine. Now, it does not mean that there is nothing, no risk in the vaccine. There is some risk, but the risk of COVID is significantly higher. And yes, people are dying more of heart attacks because there is a link to heart conditions. But this is probably part of a whole bunch of things that we're beginning to learn about as well. The whole long COVID thing, the fuzziness of the brain, other functions in the body. And it's going to take a long time before we find out more about that. I think that the myocarditis is probably one of the first things that we've noticed because there is a higher number of deaths in younger people. And I just want to highlight that even though it's been very conveniently kind of like linked to vaccines and stuff, the scientists that come out of the Mayo Clinic and all that are much more inclined to say it's more about COVID than it is about vaccine risk.
Yeah. I've seen the data, and we don't talk about COVID much anymore. It's just like nobody wants to hear about it. But the long COVID, like right from the word go when we first started this show, just sort of talking about the long-term implications. It's like humanity has no ability to sort of go there in its thinking. That long-term risk that we face with some of these things, especially with the virus, right? And and the data that's coming out now, and like I was just reading one about tinnitus, when you get the ringing in your ears, so they're linking that to the vaccines, but then some of them are saying, well, they're basically saying you instantly get it, like within hours of getting the vaccine, and some of the scientists are saying, well, that's not really possible. It takes time for it to sort of have an effect. But there's a lot of information. It's confusing. But if you follow the data, and the data is very strong, you'll get to the
actually what's a bit concerning is how out of fashion COVID's become, as in like at the point right now as we speak, it is a serious problem in China, but we speak of it as though it's not happening anywhere in the world. That's the real kind of situation we're I think we're very fashion driven. We kind of all get it and then we lose it and forget it and then it's behind us, and right now we're not thinking about what's happening in China, even though for them it is, it's not maximum COVID, but still a very bad problem there.
Yeah. The number one advice is try not to get it.
Yeah.
The more you get it, the worse it is. Tim?
I agree. You shouldn't get it. We're over to my news items. So, look, I'm talking a little bit about Turkey. You've been following what's been going on with the earthquake in Turkey and Syria. So, we're harking back a little bit. Let me give you an update. Let me give you a preview and then a bit of an update in some of the news articles. So going back to what actually happened on February, I'm going to read this. On February 13th, a powerful earthquake struck the border region between Turkey and Syria with a magnitude of 6.9 on the Richter scale. The quake caused significant damage and loss of life in both countries. In Turkey, the earthquake was centered in the city of Sivris, located in the eastern province of Elazig. At least 8 people, this is at the time that it immediately hit, at least 8 people were reported dead and over 20 others injured. That number has gone off the scale since then. Many buildings were damaged and residents were left without power or water. Across the border in Syria, the quake was felt strongly in the city of Aleppo, where buildings and infrastructure were severely damaged. At least 4 people reported dead, dozens more were injured. That was at the time. The earthquake was also felt in neighboring countries, including Lebanon, Israel, and Jordan. Aid organizations and emergency responders were quickly mobilized to provide assistance to those affected by the disaster. Turkey and Syria are both located in a seismically active region, and earthquakes are not uncommon. In 1999, for example, a devastating earthquake in Turkey killed over 17,000 people. And in 2018, another quake in the country's west caused significant damage and loss of life. By the way, ChatGPT wrote all of that. But we'll get to ChatGPT in a little while.
But one thing you said was 6.9. It was 7.8.
Yeah,
the first one was 7.8, and the second one was 7.6, I think.
So we'll get to ChatGPT's reliability, but that was all ChatGPT, which is interesting.
Interesting.
Hey, anger is swelling. So that was on the 13th, but since then we're getting articles about how anger is swelling over the quake, particularly with regards to all the buildings just collapsing. So a lot of the visuals were just watching entire buildings just crumbling, and then of course there was this whole line of buildings that had just crumbled. And the anger now is being pointed to contractors and corruption and rubber stamping these contracts that are being then shoddily built and everybody pocketing the money. That seems to be. And then, of course, there's no, this is misinformation, and everyone's sort of pointing fingers. But what the reality is, there's a heck of a lot of rubble. And while there've been some miracle stories and some, the baby getting rescued out of the rubble, which is just a fantastic one, and other stories as well. Yeah, as time goes on, those sorts of miracle stories are going to fade a little bit, and the body count is the one that's just going to start going up. There's been some arrests of those people responsible for supposedly building earthquake-proof apartment blocks. And then, of course, the struggle with the lack of aid, being able to get there on time. But there's a huge anger as well about Russian hackers disrupting the aid through cyber attacks. I mean,
yeah,
that one's just unconscionable. You can see one part is like, that's terrible. The other part is that real or is that propaganda because of the Russian war thing? But anyway, 113 arrest warrants are connected to building construction. Death toll is now past 28,000.
No, it's past 40,000.
Past 40,000. Oh, that was a New York Times article. Yeah. Past 40,000 now. The Syrians are feeling forgotten. There's no tent, no aid. There's another article as well. But the Russian hackers one, that's the one that's just going to get really annoyed with people. Have you been tracking that one, Joe?
Sorry, no, I haven't. Not the hacking part of it. What I think really strikes me about every time an earthquake happens is people call it a natural disaster, and earthquakes are actually disasters of engineering, government, and planning. It really is about that.
The damage after the earthquake, you mean?
Well, it's when you are in an earthquake-prone zone and you have to build and plan for it. You have to have everything in place so that you're ready for it. And the challenge that I think we're facing, so on the climate side, there's always this thing about where we're now exceeding the once in 100-year events, the once in 1,000-year events. Similar things are happening with earthquakes as well, because things build up. If you had an earthquake, haven't had an earthquake for a while, then you're due for an even bigger one. That's generally the idea, because it's tension as it builds up against the plates. The whole underlying thing is what you build for and what you get ready for. So when you look at what they do in California and what they say they've done in California, we hope it won't be really severely tested. But the same thing like this right now is, those buildings were probably earthquake proof, but not a 7.3. That kind of earthquake, because it's all exponential. You can build for 6. You can build for 6, but because the scale is an exponential scale, it's not often recognized that a number like an increase of 1 is actually 10 times as strong. It's not just it's not like a volume button. So they weren't ready for this kind of earthquake. But it also is, one of those things where you have to legislate and try and plan for that. So the destruction, the fallout happens because of lack of planning for it, and it sounds terrible to to say it that way, but it really is about that. It's about the governments preparing. It's about the enforcement. It's all the stuff that you do when nothing happens.
And seeing
I
the
mean-
amount of buildings that stayed up, right? It's obviously possible
Yeah.
to build for even for that extreme event, you know.
Yeah.
So presumably that comes down to a cost of building earthquake-proof buildings. But I would have thought there has to be some sort of scale of building earthquake-proof buildings that at least there's a minimum effort done to.
So
Yeah,
when it comes to the design for disaster, you can design something and put a plan out, and it can be designed well for something, and whether it's executed well, that's a whole different thing as well. So there's layers and layers where you can screw up. So there are famous designs where buildings have been made to suspend over each other because they've just made one difference in the way that things are connected. The whole thing actually literally collapsed because of that. So earthquake buildings are a bit like that as well, because things like rigidity, they're very hard to actually test. You can't really just say that, okay, I planned this factor of rigidity, this factor of flexibility, blah, blah, blah. How do you test a building for an earthquake? You can't. You can try and test some of the stuff, but most people aren't actually qualified to also test all the material. So that's a challenge. It was probably on paper designed to work. It should work, and it's one of those things where fingers crossed nothing happens. I don't think many engineers perhaps signed off on a building that wasn't quite there, but there are probably some builders along the way who put together some material when like, you know, I mean, concrete is concrete, you know. There really is there's money to be saved, lots and lots of money to be saved by changing the kind of concrete you use, because like if you look at what happens in Singapore here, some of our buildings have been put together with some very, very expensive highly technological concrete, you know, which is, you know, significantly more expensive than the regular stuff. But when you have a building that's done, you look at a hard wall, you can't tell what the concrete's made of.
Now we should have Steve on. He can talk to you about the construction techniques for earthquake buildings. That's one of his areas of knowledge. It's fascinating.
Yeah. So the numbers are it's nearing 44,000, 34,000, 38,000 or so are reported dead in Turkey, and nearly 6,000 in Syria. But the attention is now shifting a little bit towards how do we help the millions of survivors that are now, you know, having to queue for food. They've lost the local economy, and the ability to get food and supplies to everybody is the one that's causing a real humanitarian problem over there.
And the freezing conditions as well, right?
Yeah. It's pretty bad. But it's not just in Turkey that it's pretty bad. New Zealand's got a cyclone and just horrific weather conditions happening in New Zealand at the moment. Very rare for New Zealand to get the cyclone, but some areas are still cut off. 5 deaths reported, expected to rise significantly as bodies have been seen but not counted. There was also an earthquake in New Zealand and more storms on the way. So the world is shaking.
Yeah, they're messing around with all the stuff, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But they don't think. I read an article. They don't think the earthquakes between the areas are linked, because it's obviously plate shifting and stuff. But I wanted to continue with New Zealand, because there was another piece in The Guardian which was called "New Zealand Minister Decries Climate Crisis Lost Decades in Wake of Cyclone Gabriel." So I don't know if you guys remember in a show late last year, I quoted what I think politicians should be saying in situations like this, that we must act, we must get ready, do the necessary to ensure our communities are safe, and we need to follow the science. And we just haven't been hearing this from the politicians. And so I felt that when I read this piece, it was like hearing for the first time a politician really speaking in the language that we need, because any politician or leader of government who is not talking about the adaptation measures required to get ready, they're just not taking care of their community. So listen to what your politicians are saying. If they're not speaking the right language, we need to get them to change.
Hey, Andrea, I got a couple of alerts just pop up about trouble streaming to Facebook. Have you seen that?
Yeah.
So we might just want to check while we're going through the next articles as to whether it is streaming on Facebook at the moment. I don't know what we can do about it. We just keep going and it'll,
Yeah, just get rid of the screen. Just get rid of the screen. Don't know. Never popped up before. All right, so just moving on. So that's New Zealand's obviously been having a terrible time, and those of us in Asia Pacific and are obviously thinking of everyone over there. But on the other, staying down south, one of the big stories I follow, I'm going to publish a blog on the big stories that I follow from a climate perspective, is what's going on in Antarctica at the moment. So a couple of weeks ago, I challenged someone on social media to look at the information that they were sharing from the region and suggested that they should be really focused on information 6 months old, no older, because they were sharing something from 2015, 2016. And at this time, Antarctica was one of the regions that wasn't seeing these extreme changes. Boy, did that attract the trolls. But anyway, I know I was correct in raising it. But if you don't know, there's an international team of scientists. They've been in Antarctica since 2018. They come together every year, and it's this time of year because this is the summertime, and they've got a limited window where they get in there, and they've got all sorts of devices going under the ice, over the ice, checking everything. And they're reporting live what's going on. If you're on Twitter, if you follow the scientists there, there's some really extreme things going on. But this week, we heard that there's an extraordinary marine heat wave going on in Antarctica at the moment, which could threaten the ice shelves. And of course, that's things like the Doomsday Glacier. And they said the recent voyages have been marked by an eerily warm ocean and record low sea ice coverage. And there's a few more days where they're expecting this sea ice to shrink. And it's an extreme event that, that has really freaked all of the scientists out. They're describing it as dramatic, and they say if such conditions recur in the coming years, and we have El Nino coming back at the end of this year, which means it will be warmer, it could start a rapid destabilization of Antarctica's critical underpinnings of the global climate system, including ice shelves, glaciers, coastal ecosystems, and even ocean currents. So this is a big story that's been breaking in the last week. Joe?
Well, I also attended a closed door meeting where they were talking about one of the other impacts on the environment that people aren't really were looking at. Is that the permafrost is melting as well, and it's gonna affect us in the way we didn't quite expect it, because what permafrost has been doing over the eons basically is it's been trapping carbon as well. And when you thaw it out, basically, we not only have to deal with the world's current pollution, we're actually having the old pollution come back out again. And that's the double problem that we have, or at least we're all going to try and sort out. Anyway, back to
viruses, pathogens, nuclear waste.
The concerns about that as well. We definitely have some viruses from the past. The original Spanish flu is definitely out there and probably kept in the frozen ground somewhere where someone passed away in cold conditions. That's another whole deal, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, but let's go to something else that caught the attention of the world, at least America, for a while. The spy balloon. And for a while, I think people really got, because when you say balloon, it doesn't feel like it's a big thing. You kind of minimize the thing, and you just think, oh, we should have done that. So which is why you had a lot of criticism by political players, who said, why don't you just shoot the damn thing down or bring it down, right? And they really couldn't, because this was it had with it basically 3 buses worth of equipment that was being flown at that height. So if you try and pop a balloon like that over ground or somewhere above the U.S., it's a potential problem on the ground. Plus, you didn't know what it was on it and all that kind of stuff. So it's one of those interesting things where they're trying to find out what's on it. They presume that it's mostly harmless, but they didn't have a chance to know that for sure. So right now, what they're doing is it's very possibly the same team that helped put together Challenger after it exploded over Florida. Is probably working on this now to put everything back together again to see exactly what it was that was flying across the U.S. and causing such a stir. The other story that we saw was a story about hacking. How we always hear about hacking and destabilization of governments, and we always think Russia. Well, the other name that comes up every now and then came up big time, Israel. and a company that was actually linked to Israeli Ministry of Defense contracts. So apparently, when I say apparently, this is very much corroborated. It's an international group of investigators and journalists who got together and did a lot of undercover stuff, which is really very impressive. Clandestine recordings. They've actually revealed the name of the person, the kingpin behind this operation. It's a company out of Israel that basically offers its services to hack or destabilize and massage social outcomes using digital means. So they can hack into what people think are very secure platforms like Telegram and Gmail, and they go into shenanigans like basically sending a sex toy to your address, so your wife opens up and goes, "What's this?"
Mm-hmm.
So it's and available from a reasonable price of between $400,000 and $600,000 if you want to destabilize the government or push a election your way.
All right, Tim, one more.
Yeah, okay. Well, there was a report back on climate. There was a report published in Inside Climate News, and it talks about how twice as much land in developing nations will be swamped by rising seas. That's a bit dangerous for a couple of reasons when you think about it. It's like, oh, well, it's not going to happen to us as much as it's going to happen to them, so we don't have to worry so much. But up until a few years ago, most estimates of how fast rising seas will inundate shorelines were based on radar measurements, and they couldn't distinguish between the top of a building and the top of the land. So if it's the top of a building, the land is actually down here. There'll be a lot more flooding. If it's the top of the land, then it might be okay. So therefore, they could overestimate surface elevation. The study analyzed global data from NASA's ICESat-2 satellite, which uses light detection and ranging to get more accurate measurements. And this is a LIDAR instrument. It combines info from laser pulses and a scanner and specialized GPS receiver. I don't know why they just don't use Google Maps, but anyway, it generates a detailed 3D information features on the surface of the Earth. And the quote there is, "It's no surprise that particularly for moderate sea level rise, the improved elevation data is bad news because they've improved the data to realize a lot more of it is low."
Yeah.
And so more flooding can be expected for a given rise of 1 meter or 2 meters, which is what everybody's been working with. The Singapore government, for example, have built 1 meter walls, but then if it gets into the land, there's another meter to get into the train stations and tunnels and things like that. So it's got a 2 meter protection, for example, but anything beyond that, flooding starts to happen. Anyway, he's talking about more flooding can be expected on a given rise of 1 meter to 2 meters. More people living in areas vulnerable to rising seas was estimated. You know, what's amazing is that when Al Gore did his Inconvenient Truth, he showed everybody the big map of everything that's going to be flooding. And that was based on the old data.
Yeah.
And that was already shocking. And that was already like, and nothing, it just feels like nothing's happened. It feels like nothing's happened since Inconvenient Truth, except Inconvenient Truth 2 came out.
Yeah, no, it's very frustrating. And
I
say with my own eyes. I see with my own eyes, there's a great restaurant here in Phuket. If you get there on a high tide, you'll have the sea in the restaurant with you. It's kind of bizarre, and you don't ever put your handbag on the ground, that's for sure. But
in France, they just tore down.
Yeah.
France had just tore down an apartment block because it was on the shoreline, and it was a beautiful sea frontage one. Well, now it's sort of sea inundated, and they just tore it down. So it's happening to the extent that buildings are being demolished because they're no longer safe in places like Europe.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's frustrating because I feel helpless.
Yeah.
Well, it's the way human beings are designed, and basically we can be in the middle of a raging fire. If you stub your toe, you look at your toe. I mean, that's just how it is.
All right, let's move on to the theme. ChatGPT and AI, is it good, bad, or both? And this is obviously the biggest news that's going on, especially in the technology industry. This is a massive technology revolution that is going to change the way we work. think, right, do everything. And it's going to change the world as we know it. So AI, or artificial intelligence, there's a lot of people that are extremely excited about it, and I'm an exciting pan, so I get excited about technology, that's for sure. But one of the things that I struggle with is that there doesn't seem to be enough talk of what's not good about it. And just in case you're wondering, AI, artificial intelligence, we're talking about ChatGPT, which everyone's familiar with now. Google's launching Bard, and there's so many AI tools out there. So just to give you a feel, but I just kind of keep thinking, are we walking once again into a revolution that definitely is going to have great aspects for all of us and for humanity, but are we paying enough attention to what could go wrong? And do we have the right models in place? Do we have the right rules, or even the right ethics? And I just look at social media here for when I think of this question, what's great about social media is still great. But what's bad about it? Well, it's basically destroying our democracy and sending us towards a dystopia, So, and, you sort of look at the social media companies. I don't think that they've addressed the risk that they have for all of us at all, even though they claim to. So, the trusting the technology companies to be doing the right thing is difficult when we've looked at what's been going on in the last year. But the other side of things is, because I've been in technology industry for 30 years and I've spent loads of time with developers. I love developers. When I watch someone developing coding, it's like watching someone composing a symphony. It's the same feeling, and they're amazing people with incredible talent, but their buzz is from what it is possible to create. That's what they get buzzed up about, right? And it's very infectious to be around them, but I never see them really thinking about the wider social implications. And I've talked to them about it, but it's not what they do and it's not their job. There needs to be another layer on top. Should we invent this? Those sort of questions, right? And I don't know. I mean, do I trust Microsoft to have done the right thing with this? I know that I've worked with Microsoft. I think it's a very trustworthy company, but this is beyond those big trustworthy companies. So we'd love to hear your thoughts, your comments. Keep it respectful. We're not here to have a fight with anyone. But Tim, do you want to kick us off with your thoughts?
I love it. I can understand. It feels a little bit like there's one argument which is like the gun lobbyist argument. It's like, no, we're just making guns. If people, that's for people to defend themselves and to use it for responsible ways. Guns probably not the best example, but it's like how it's bad people using guns causes bad things. Good people using guns really can't. Okay, guns is a terrible example, but it's the same sort of thing where we're saying, don't blame the tool, blame the people. But at the same time, so I was talking to Justin. Justin's been on the show before, and he said something that I really agree with. He said the feeling of playing with AI in and seeing what it can do. He said to him is the third time he's had this feeling. The first time was the first time he managed to connect to the internet, via modem. And it was just like, wow, this is going to be amazing. And the second time is when he was able to really connect with the mobile phone, internet-wise, upload photos, doing that sort of thing. I remember that feeling as well. And he said this is the third time he's had that feeling because of the potential and possibility and how it can help and how it can just make things so much easier. I mean, in a sense, hopping onto ChatGPT and just typing in, okay, so I typed in the earthquake thing before and you saw how it was not immediate. It was a bit dated, even for something that happened on February the 13th, and it didn't give up-to-date data, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But what it's able to do is to say, give me a brief on something. I need to connect with my team. Give me, this is the feeling I want to get. It's almost like having this personal assistant that gives you what you ask for in a way that's so much better than you asked for. And then from that, you make it your own and you add your elements to it as well. So I find it, that's the ChatGPT side. from the image side of creating images that reflect what I was thinking and being able to do so much more. I mean, you know, there was one of the I think it was artist.ai or something like that. No, it was playground.ai, playgroundai.com, that I was fiddling around with an image, and it said, just sketch something and upload that, and you know, we'll try and turn it into what you're looking for. And I went, oh yeah, okay, that's a good idea. And I sketched something, and I went, actually, I quite like my sketch. Maybe I'll just post my sketch instead. But I uploaded it, and it just turned it into this fantastic, you know, oil painting version of what I had scribbled. And I, you know, it's what, and these are very basic. I mean, you know, ChatGPT, writing a few things or doing a bit of research, for example, you know, where I've said, give me seven examples of this and 7 examples of that. And it's prepared it in a paper, and I said in academic style and something like that. So it's gone, okay, so it's given me this, and I've gone, oh, okay, so I will, this one no, but these 5 I really like, and I'm going to go in a little bit deeper and investigate that. And this one I didn't know about, so I need to go and do a bit of extra research. It's almost like going to Wikipedia, and instead of searching until you find it, or a library, instead of searching until you find it and reviewing all the articles, it gives you a review of what it has and gives you a sort of starting point to go quicker. The issue I have, that is the very obvious issue, I mean, there's lots of issues, but the issue I have is social media at the moment is about connecting people with people. The reason why I think some of your friends, as you said at the top of the show, were dropping off social media is, as you're scrolling through it, it's hard to find Andrea's update amongst everybody trying to sell you something. And it got to the point of one Andrea update, one Joe update, and 25 people trying to sell me something becomes a less all in one place convenient way of getting an update from Andrea and Joe, to the point where I'll just connect with Andrea and Joe. So in a weird way, that's a good thing if we're actually going to have personal connection again, check in and go, hey, how are you going? But that's not what the social media was supposed to be doing. Now, if we use ChatGPT to go, you know what, just automate all of my social media posts and do this, it means I don't care about connecting with you anymore. I just want to sell you something. And here's the picture, here's the thing. And I know people are already doing that with third-party organizations and VAs and everything else. But this is just going to make it so much more ubiquitously robots selling other robots. I mean, the nice image I saw was somebody going, you know, Jeff wants a job. So Jeff uses ChatGPT to write an amazing resume. And then the guy who receives a resume uses ChatGPT to go, give me the summary of what this resume is actually saying. And it spits it back to Jeff wants the job. It's, you know, and it's like, we're not having conversations anymore. It's just robots talking to robot, effectively, right? But that's the very simple version. There's a lot more darker stuff that's happening, and I guess we're going to get into that. But at the top of it, it's what I find frustrating is if it gets pulled because we've just fed it such horrible stuff, and you know, we're trying to find new chemical warfare and all that sort of stuff, and it's telling us the thing, or how to do this and blow that up and all of this sort of stuff. It's just like, if that's what we're using for, and it gets pulled because of that, we've lost an amazing resource. And the only way that would be policed is either through tying us to the requests that we put in that then implicate us and then fine people financially somehow, or through their freedom somehow. But then that can be abused to lock people up who didn't do anything wrong and all that sort of thing. Or it just gets pulled and gets used, you know, in military and whatever, and we just lost access to it. And I reckon that would be a travesty. So I can't really see that happening since it's been sort of unleashed. It's about how it's going to be refined and pointed, and presumably gets to some sort of subscriber model before too long, where it costs people to do things so they think twice about doing stupid things. But at the same time, bad is still being lobbied, and there's money behind getting particular outcomes. So I'm excited by the creative element of it. I'm concerned about the misuse of it, but I'm so excited about the potential it has for productivity, the potential it has for creativity and solving problems and helping people get from where they're thinking to deeper levels of thinking quickly, if the data is accurate. So then that becomes the challenge as well.
All right. So, Joe, just before you jump in, I'll just talk through some of the negatives that I've been sort of reading about. So, this was a few years ago. There was a story out of Amazon where they used artificial intelligence to recruit employees, and they had to stop because basically what they were doing was attracting the bot was basically proposing resumes for people who, and they were all white, male, and similarly educated, right? Because it's based on data that already exists, right? So Seth Godin a number of years ago said, if you rely on the data, all you're going to get is more of the Kardashians, which I've quoted many, many times, right? So for me, it's like, well, so where do new ideas come from? And if we go full steam ahead without correcting these issues where, like this past data, which is if you're going to look for new employees, you're just going to, we're not going to tackle the diversity and equality issue. But then the other side is education.
Big one. That's a huge one. I was going to mention that too.
Right? And already an app has been created by a young teenager somewhere up in Canada, I think, which can identify text from AI. The other side is, my first reaction was, oh God, we're just going to have more noise on social media. Haven't we got enough noise on social media? And, people are talking about writing blogs, writing their social media posts, even you can write a whole book, you don't need to write it yourself anymore. Loss of jobs. So we were talking, last year when there was all these jobs and there weren't enough people to fill it. And I don't know if you remember this, Joe, we were talking about, when there's not enough people to fill jobs, technology fills the space and moves forward. And so here we are. There's a great place in Futurism, and it's BuzzFeed columnist tells CEO to get fucked for move to AI content. Is this where our news is going to be coming from the machines? Where's the original thought, original perspectives? Deep fakes are a huge risk, and this is, we've already seen it. Someone famous like Barack Obama is talking on a video, but it's not actually him.
Ukraine war.
Yeah, exactly.
Ukraine war that had Ukraine's president saying, "Lay down your weapons."
Yeah, right. That sort of thing. De-aging. So Indiana Jones is coming up in June, and I'm very excited. I'm a big indie fan. I think, maybe he's already found the secret of eternal youth. They're basically aged him from an 80-year-old down to a 30-year-old. And, that's creating a lot of conversation. We're going to just hang on to the old actors, our old heroes. And obviously the incentive there is that movies make more money when you can bring the existing character in. But the big one, yeah, exactly. But the big one that you mentioned is AI is very proficient at designing nerve agents. So this group of scientists basically were searching for molecules that met two criteria: positive therapeutic possibilities and low toxicity for humans. But then they were invited by this group called the Swiss Federal Institute for Nuclear, Biological and Chemical Protection on technology developments that might have implications for the Chemical Biological Weapons Convention, and they were asked to present a paper on how it could be misused. And basically what they realized is that, first of all, they'd never thought about it, and then they just turned the message to switch to look for these bad ones. In 6 hours, they generated 40,000 molecules that scored within the threshold set by the researchers. And this include VX, which is an original one that we know that's been used in wars before, chemical war agents, but also ones that have never been discovered before. So put it in the wrong hands, we're in trouble. So, from the consumer perspective that you were talking about, Tim, definitely, and I don't think they're going to take it away. Like, they're not going to take away social media, but there's all these other aspects to it, because it's like CRISPR. The technology's out there now, and you want technology to be out there, because then you can see its true potential when everyone has access to it. But this is the other side that's, to me, is that's the conversation that I just think people just need to be making sure they're also having that. Sorry, Joe.
Well, no, I was thinking about AI this way, as in like we're having this conversation as though it all just arrived, but it's been around for quite a long time. As in, like, you know,
Yeah.
if you look at all the vaccines that have come out in the past 3, 4, or 5 years, right? Those have happened because of AI. Because of AI, you were able to design molecules, rapid test them, and bring them out. And that's why, and some people don't realize this, and when they do, they're even more terrified. The COVID vaccine was developed in 24 hours. You know, that molecule was modeled and tested, and it was shortlisted within a period of 24 hours. And then after that, a lot of rapid testing as well beyond that. But that was only possible because of AI, because of big data, because of all the processes that go with computational science. Uh, People who think that AI does what we do, or we could do what AI does. We actually can't. I mean, we don't have the skills to literally do it by hand to de-age Harrison Ford. We all realize that's a big task, but that's you know, it's taken a long time for it to come to the point where it can be done so fast and at scale that it is, you don't get you don't get freaked out by the results of it, right? It looks natural. So we you know, when Tim was describing all the attributes about AI, I was just thinking to myself, I could just replace that with the word Google. If you just looked at Google, and I described this about, you know, in 2009, or when Google had just come out, everything you said would be what people would have said about Google, you know, and right down to the last thing you said, which is about the veracity of the data. Is the data accurate? And that's what people kind of said about Google. And Google developed and grew, and we've had all kinds of weird things happen as well. And I think where we will be with AI is where we are with social media. In the early days of social media, you go like, isn't this great? We can do this, we can do that, we can do that. And I think there was some early murmurings about all the things that could go wrong. And people perhaps thought, well, I don't think those things are going to happen. But I think those things are going to happen.
Yeah.
And I think where AI will lead us eventually is where plastic surgery has led us. Um, you know, there are a lot of people who have plastic surgery in the world, and you can tell. Now, there are also a lot of people who have them, a smaller number who've had them and are being treated by artists who know how to make it work so it works really well. And those people create really, really great results using the same essential technology, but more artistically. So AI, I believe, is going to be about the art of AI. It's going to be about how you give the right prompts and ask the right questions. As far as performance is concerned, right now, seriously, I've really taken off my list of things I need to do. Getting an intern. The
So
what I
that's
can get,
impacting jobs, right? But that impacts
it is
jobs and
impacting
opportunities
jobs.
for younger people. You know,
It
it's
is
like Tim's
impacting.
art, but it's like Tim's art. You know, that's going to
Yeah,
really impact all of those freelance graphic designers that work
yeah,
across the Philippines, across Africa. Who do, you know, who rely on that income. You know, and I see people. You know, they're like, oh, I don't have to pay for stock photography anymore, so it's going to impact photographers and videographers. And
yeah,
you know, like we keep celebrating taking the humans out of our world, like down at the supermarket, right? I
yeah,
don't want to go to a machine. I want to talk to a person. You know, I
yeah,
want to have that interaction. You know, so I just think we've got to. It's just those sort of things, you know. Like when
yeah.
is it okay to take the humans out, and when we shouldn't? You know, the plastic surgery analogy was an interesting one.
Well, we'll get to the point where so when AI is done artistically really well, it will be beautiful. I mean, that really is ultimately. You've got to imagine interacting like right now. You go like, I want to interact with a person. Uh, but we will get to the point, and it sounds terrible as an idea, but you will be face to face with an AI which you will prefer to a good number of people in your life. I mean,
Well,
that's
I, 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 I tell you what, if banks put it in to their branches, I think everyone will be happier. Because sitting in a bank branch for 2 hours waiting for the one person or two people that they put on to serve you is the most mind-numbingly frustrating thing that big organizations are doing. Like back to Andrea's point, if it's taking out the human person at that front level, that's interesting. From a bank perspective, of course, there's checks and balances and but I feel like we're at the beginning of a bonfire where it goes big, and then it's going to come down to the coals where it's going to be a bit more useful. It's at that exploration phase where it's going to define some of the boundaries, or but it just feels to me like as technology is doing this and we're moving forward, a lot more tech protection companies are going to start coming into play, where we're going to have to employ not just like virus checkers, but just protection in some way. Like there's AI now to check whether you've plagiarized. I mean, it's been around for a while. Plagiarism checkers. There's one where you can get so from an education perspective, this is a real big deal because the whole point of education is so that you have the knowledge to be able to do something rather than pretend you have the knowledge by using the computer and still not having the knowledge. So that comes down to that. Ultimately, the whole thing is going to come down to values in some way, and weirdly enough, morality. But if our highest value is financial success at all costs, that's where we're going to have a bit of a problem. We're seeing climate problem not being addressed because of financial success at all costs, and one of those all costs seems to be the planet. And we're not doing enough to shift things away because of the financial component of this. We look at the Turkey earthquakes and everybody pointing the finger. It's because of financial success at all costs, like the cost of building a safe building. And now people are dead. And, those people are running away. We look at the Russia-Ukraine war. It's grabbing power for financial something at all costs. We've got a values problem in the world. That's a hard one to fix because we're devaluing anything that actually purported to serve the values position. And we're devaluing that. We're pushing it aside and we're saying everybody can do whatever they want. And we're getting to the everybody can do whatever they want world, which is a bloody scary world. Because we don't want everybody to do whatever they want. And now we've got AI available to everybody to do whatever they want. And we've got no moral boundaries. So, so we've got a very complex game. We're dealing with humans who are ultimately flawed. But if the value is always pushing financial success at all costs, we have a problem. As relationship value goes up, that'll be an interesting one. Because the countries that are relationship focused, I think have a good chance to rise above as the others self-combust. So the individualistic countries might have a challenge, and we're seeing this already in the world, and those family-oriented, like the Asian societies typically, are quite collective-focused and relationship-focused, not always, but quite that way. They may see some sort of advantage in this as this moves forward. And then from a communication online, we're going to start filtering out anything AI-related. There'll be a filter technology come in, filter out anything that seems to be AI, and that will basically come down to human stories that seem to be consistent with a person's feed over X amount of years, and maybe that sort of data will come into play. But then deep fake plays on that sort of stuff too. So it's going to be an interesting play. But from the speaking industry, for example, why do we need a professional speaker anymore? We can get AI to write a good speech that should inspire our people. Write me a motivational speech. We can get a robot now to clone your face and voice to present it, and you can actually have training videos and all of that. I mean, I'm seeing courses on my Facebook feed already, which is how to create either books through and sell books on Amazon bestsellers for GPT created books, and also training programs that are all automated like this, using the robot to do this, using your face over, or even just a computer generated presenter with a natural sounding voice using ChatGPT this, and you just cut and paste this into this and this. But the value of the professional speaker actually will be the value of the stories that connect, that reveal a personality. And AI is not coming up with stories so great yet. But it would just take them to look at the feeds of people's stories over the last 20 years of social media to be able to start creating reasonable stories, I would have thought. And but for that presenter to come up and present a story that connects the message of the organization to the audience feeling, to the challenge they're having at the moment, and to be able to craft that and deliver it in a way that is responsive and engaging does create that small space. But everything through this screen that we're looking at now can be artificial. So then person to person becomes interesting.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's an exciting moment, exciting era. But again, I mean, I guess everybody's saying, and what we've all been saying is it's fraught with a moral problem.
Yeah. Well, it's also about trust, right? Trusting the technology industry. Trust is a massive issue in the world, governments, institutions, you name it. And it's about trusting the technology companies to be doing the right thing, and they don't really have a great track record of that. So, that potentially could go against them too. Joe, you got any sort of final thoughts?
Well, the thing about AI, it's like it's bringing up children, isn't it? You're really trying to give your kids the kind of right start, right kind of guidance, right values, and right decisions and stuff like that, and they're going to end up where they end up. And I think we have the one good thing about AI is that it is not hormone driven. It doesn't have that kind of irrationality that comes about because of hormonality. So, but the thing, the flip side of that is because of that, it can also be rather ruthless, because there was this game that was being played by an AI famously where the idea was survival. And what the AI did and to win the game ultimately was it survived by getting all the resources together. It would breed and then eat their own children. Because
Nice.
logically and based on the game, that worked. So there's some things that AI will do which we wouldn't, because it's not hampered by it. But at the same time, there are lots of impulsive things that AI won't do because it's not also being driven by the irrationality of hormones, and that can be a very big thing. So AI theoretically should not get angry. AI theoretically shouldn't get frustrated. But it also means that AI is limitless in terms of its desire to find a solution. If this doesn't work, we got 40,000 more that we can try.
There was a story where ChatGPT started sending unhinged messages to people. So
that was Bing.
Was it? The title is Microsoft's new ChatGPT AI starts sending unhinged messages.
Oh,
so. Yeah. I think a couple of things, but okay, we're in the middle of a revolution. Please pay attention to it. Please pay attention to it. Even if you don't use it or whatever, pay attention to what's going on. So a lot of jobs are going to be replaced. We were just talking about a few examples, right? So
yep.
you need to know what those jobs are. But I think also as businesses move towards more technology and less human capital, then they're going to be making much bigger profits. So this is the when my feeling about this is, as we move towards this technology, then we need to start thinking about how we run our societies, because there's going to be a lot of people who are unemployed and there are no jobs available. So how do we do that? So do the massive profits these companies start being turned into things like funding universal basic income? So that's one of the conversations that has been happening in the background for a really long time, and it's worth paying attention to. But the most important thing I just really want to say, everyone, is pay attention to how it's going to impact you and what you do. Whatever field you're in, there's an example in Chile where a judge used it on a case. So the legal fraternity is going to be impacted. Policing, medical, and we're already seeing robots and machines in hospitals doing surgeries. And Steve had a little thing, a little chip in his arm with scanning his vitals. It's the first time I'd ever seen it. Freelance work, if you're a photographer, if you're an artist, a musician, any of those sort of things is going to be impacted by it. So don't wait to be smacked in the side of the head when it comes, because it is coming. pay attention and understand how it's going to impact what you do, and work out what you can do that machines can't do, and really, really focus on developing your skill set in that area, because that's where the future for you is going to lie. So I just think that's, that's probably the thing that I'm concerned about from an individual, us collectively, perspective. But yeah, so any final thoughts, guys?
Yeah, I think this particular area has been catching online because the people who are most affected now is content creators, people who are in
Yeah.
the business of writing and whatever it is. They feel threatened, and now it's come for them, right? I mean, that basically that's why it is that way. And the truth that I'm willing to accept is that a lot of the work that gets done by AI is better than the work that I would do if I really wasn't paying attention. I mean, that's really it. Like if I at the last minute, AI is much better at putting together a report than I am. But if I'm going to write a book over 10 years, I'm probably the one to do it. But it depends on what you're doing. So you've got to think in terms of like real terms as well. Some of us are protecting an ill-gotten gain. Where we're in a position where perhaps we're seen as speakers, perhaps we're seen as thought leaders, when I think some of us are just basically thought borrowers, and we don't even pay a leasing fee for the stuff that we steal from others, right? So I'll freely admit I'm someone who gets influenced very much by all that around me, and I behave, I think, like a low-powered AI with not as much resources and like some degree of creativity. So I think that the maybe we need to also look at things realistically and go like, well, is it time for me to give up this game, or change how I play the game? We can't just say, no, this is coming from my job, I don't like it. For people who say that it's coming for you, it's already come. It's already there. It's taken your place. Real life top end illustrators right now have lost jobs to AI. There's the legal cases being fought right now because the styles have been borrowed from these actual people. But top end people have had that because as much as you can search for the great work of this particular artist, almost surely nowadays the second result will be an AI set of results in the style of the same artist. So the reality is, if you want to be good, you have to get better. And if you are just good enough right now, then you have to develop some other skills that are going to help, like maybe scaling. Maybe you want to be the guy who can produce 20 AIs or 50 AI pieces of output for $5 each, because maybe that's the game you're entitled to play.
Yeah, right. Nice one.
That'll be on Fiverr.
Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah. So, shall we round off the first return show of February?
Probably.
Yeah.
Good.
So we've had Nirj is here, and Cigar. We've also had somebody commenting extensively. I'm not comfortable with the AI such as ChatGPT. It's open for misuse and abuse, and it was a really good comment. But we can't see who you are, so I apologise. But thank you to everyone for joining us. What's keeping you distracted?
Right now, funnily enough, almost on theme, as I'm watching the show The Last of Us. That's a series on HBO, and it is a beautiful science fiction show that's been developed out of a computer game. And a lot of people would probably just think, oh, computer game, but no, it's such a well put together idea. It talks about the way the world could end, or how humanity can end, and what happens beyond that point. The science fiction is really on point. It actually could happen. So I don't want to put any spoilers out because it's that good, and it's wrapped around some of the best human stories on television right now. So the game, as you may know, is an adventure where you try to solve problems as you move through this world. They've managed to put a show of stories as they move through the world that it's really very engaging, very human. And definitely, I don't want to spoil it for you, but go catch it. It's on HBO.
The Last what?
The Last of Us.
Yeah,
okay. I've heard of it.
It's the game bit that everyone's talking about it, raving about it, loving it, and it's the game bit that I just kept going.
The game disappears. It really doesn't matter. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, Tim. Apart from your study.
it's overwhelming me at the moment. But I have occasionally been distracted by my wife's been watching some 100 strongest Korean people in some battling it out game show, and every so often I end up watching these extraordinarily muscly people in Korea having to do, the just weird game show things of hanging with their strength until somebody else collapses and then they move to the next round, or playing tag or whatever. It's almost like that other one that, what's the one where they keep killing everybody?
It's basically Squid Game without death.
Squid Game without killing everybody. Yeah, yeah. So it's similar, but everyone's like super duper muscly. So every so often I'll watch that. It's called 100 something or other.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's called physical 100, or as my friend calls it, sweet meat.
100.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
But it's quite cool to watch them do some of the things, and just, I mean, really, it's a show of 100 strong people eventually failing and being broken, except for one person who's going to win. I mean, because they're all like, I'm the strongest person and I know, and I'm definitely going to win this. And then they're like, I can't hold on anymore. They're pushing, they're doing, Sisyphus's challenge of rolling some 100-kilo boulder up a hill. And they have to just keep going forever until one person's left doing it. And so eventually they tire and they run out. It sounds mind-numbingly stupid, and it is, but it's a distraction. Sorry, that took far too long, but anyway.
No, it sounds interesting. So I watched The Empress, which is a new story about Austro-Hungarian times, young lady. Bit disappointed with how the first season ended, but it's an ending of a season, so it's supposed to bring me back. But I definitely, if you like your history, it's beautifully done. But the one thing I would recommend everyone to watch is Pamela, A Love Story, which is obviously Pamela Anderson, right?
Yeah.
Now, look, as a representative of female in the world growing up, she was not a woman that I aspired to be like. And I know that I was blinded to her as an intellectual human being based on my own prejudice. And because I just don't understand women who do that, but I also don't judge women who do that. And I think what she's done here is she's trying to put her narrative out into the world. And she talks about what her life has been like and the pain that she's gone through and how much more she was punished versus Tommy, her former husband, and all sorts of stuff that went on in her life. And I found it an incredibly powerful show, and I think it's a real commentary around how we treat women, famous women, especially women who are comfortable using their body to express themselves, and we basically don't have any respect for them, so therefore we judge them, and it's the story of how that has an impact on somebody, and I just thought it was absolutely sensational. So I do recommend watching Pamela, A Love Story. It's really, really beautiful.
Yeah, I've watched that on my 120-inch TV, and because it's such a large screen, the rest of the household kind of sometimes it comes in and out as I'm watching stuff. It almost seemed to be that every time someone stepped into the room, they would catch me at a scene where they were just showing some of the nudie stuff that she was doing.
Right.
It's not what you think.
Yeah.
It's not my bag, baby.
The majority of it was just, she no makeup, just 50-something-year-old woman, just telling her story. It was I thought it was really cool.
Yep.
Those sort of stories need to be told.
Watch Pamela, don't watch Physical 100.
We'll do both. All right, guys. Thanks for joining us. Thanks, guys. Good to be back.
Oh, I put in some great radio show sign-offs into ChatGPT, so can I use one?
Sure.
The time has flown by and it's time to say goodbye. Thanks for making us a part of your day, and we'll catch you next time. This is Tim signing off.
Nice. I haven't got access to it yet.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
Chat.openai.com.
Yeah, no. I just put in another request today. So, yeah. All right.
Okay. Well, tell me what you want, and I'll do it for $5.
Okay, all right. I actually want to put some of my content through it and see what it does to what I've done. and see what it recommends. I think, I'm not stupid. You pay attention, right?
Yeah,
Anyway,
but what would be good is to say rewrite this in the style of J.R.R. Tolkien with Lord of the Rings characters, and then see what you'll have a ball.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
All right. We'll see you guys in a couple of weeks. All right.
All right.
Yeah,
Take care, everyone.